Since 2002, I have not owned a clinic that was closer than 120 miles from where I lived. In fact, there was a period of time there from 2015 to 2021 that I lived in Oregon, and I was running clinics on the East Coast in Tennessee. And I get asked the question a lot, how do you run a clinic when you're not even there? How's that even possible? I got to give you some background on that. It is possible and it's very doable, but there's some prep work you have to do, a lot of prep work. I'm going to explain to you what I did. My background is originally in business. I graduated from Stockton State College in New Jersey in 1983. It's now Stockton University, and I got a degree in marketing. So when I graduated school, my first job I got was with a company called Reuben Donnelly, and they were owned by Dun & Bradstreet. They were an advertising company and they sold advertising, and they were very corporate America, very large company, headquarters in Manhattan, headquarters in Philadelphia. Spent 2 weeks in Manhattan, 2 weeks in Philadelphia, getting trained on how to do sales of advertising. The advertising we were doing was the yellow pages. The yellow pages were the listing of all the businesses, and those businesses could advertise. Now, back in the early 1980s, it was still taboo for a medical doctor to advertise, so the doctors that I was working with were chiropractors and dentists, because they spent a lot of money on advertising. And they spent a lot of money on the yellow pages because that's where people went to find somebody. So it was a great experience. But while I was getting my undergrad degree, I got exposed to a lot of different things. And I remember this one class I had my senior year, a senior business class. And the way the class was constructed was the instructor said, here's John Doe. And he had a picture of John Doe on the board. And he said, John Doe has this much money to spend, X hundreds of thousands of dollars, on an investment. So we've divided your classroom up into multiple groups of 4. And in each group there was a marketer, somebody who had a marketing major, which was me, somebody who had an accounting major, somebody who had a finance major, and somebody who had a management major. And the 4 of us would have to get together and come up with an idea, and we would have to propose an investment to the professor. And whatever group got the investment, the professor was going to pick one investment for that X amount of money. Whoever got them to want their investment, that group got an A no matter how else they did in the rest of the course. So it was the major project in the entire course. And my group won. And it was pretty interesting. I learned a lot from it because we had to look at a business from the ground up. Most doctors out there that are listening to this did not do that. Some did, but some, they go to chiropractic school and they get their degree, or they go to medical school and they get their degree, and then they go out and they start a business with absolutely no idea what they're doing. And that's pretty tough to do. But with me, I had to go through this experience where we had to start researching what was the investment going to be. I remember one group, we weren't the most profitable investment the professor could have picked, but I'll tell you why he picked us. The most profitable group, there was a group with the same 4 people, and they picked a porn shop that sold porn magazines and videos and stuff like that. They were the most profitable one. And they laid out all the books, why it would be a great investment. And the professor said, yeah, but you overlooked one thing. I would never own a porn shop. I'm married and I have kids. My kids would be appalled if I bought a porn shop. So they didn't win. We won because we picked a Dunkin' Donuts. In fact, we picked 2 Dunkin' Donuts. And the way it worked out was the finance guy in my group had a family friend who invested in a Dunkin' Donuts. And he said, maybe we can get Dunkin' Donuts to send us information. We contacted Dunkin' Donuts. We said we're making a proposal for somebody to invest in it. And they sent us all the specs. When we had to do the research, we had to go out and look at what was the parking like, what was the traffic like on the street, who were we going to hire? We had to learn that. And Dunkin' Donuts, they have it turnkey from everything you have to look at, who you're going to hire. They had it down to how you hire them, how you schedule them, how they make tips, and what the payroll is going to be. They had how you make the donuts, the material you make the donuts with, where that comes from, how you pay for it. They had all the books, all the expenses, all the overhead. They had the parking lot figured out. They had the drive-by figured out. It was an amazing experience to go through and see how all these aspects of business were taken into account for by this company. And we learned while we did that, and I don't know if it's still this way to this day, but I'll bet you it is, there are no unprofitable Dunkin' Donuts in the country. Back then, in the agreement, it said, if you hit a certain number where your profits were only so much above your overhead, they got to take it back and you lost your investment. So when people signed on for Dunkin' Donuts, they had some major skin in the game. But Dunkin' Donuts provided a lot for these people to be successful, and they had the reputation, as far as the franchise investments go, as being a successful franchise. So people desired to invest in that group because there was nobody that was failing. The ones that were failing were eliminated. All the stores were working. All you had to do is have the drive to follow their rules, follow their systems, and work. So I'll give you an example of that. We learned that who has to make the donuts. If you remember the commercial back in the 1980s, it was like, gotta make the donuts, gotta make the donuts. They would train the baker, they would train the store manager, and they would train the owner, because if the baker was sick, somebody had to go in and make the donuts. And if the baker ran off with the store manager and started another business, they had to have somebody make the donuts, and that would be the owner. They ran it that way so that everything was covered all the time. And so when we presented it, the professor said, yeah, this is the best investment presented in this quarter, and you guys get the A, and it was pretty good. And I think he actually went out and invested in the Dunkin' Donuts, although once I got my grade, I was done with that class. But that really helped me when I was looking to start my business, because I realized I found myself looking at a lot of the same things. Looking at where's my office going to be, and what kind of neighborhood is it in, and what kind of people would go there, and what kind of people would be uncomfortable going there, what kind of people would be comfortable going there. How could I get patients attracted to this area? Was it an easy pull-in? Was it an easy pull-out? Was there plenty of parking? And I took all that stuff into account, and it helped me a lot. But I opened my business based on passion, and I made a cardinal mistake. The mistake I made was I created a personality-driven business. Well, what is that? A personality-driven business is a business that is based on one significant being or person who's running that business. And it all hinges on that person. And so professionals tend to do this. My father was not a professional. My father was not a doctor, lawyer, accountant. My father had a small business. He was a good salesman. He was in industrial maintenance supply sales. And while he was doing that, he came across a product line of doormats, safety doormats. These were vinyl-backed rugs that you could put in a doorway up in the Northeast when it snowed. People came with snow in their boots, and basically that snow would be messy and ugly and dangerous because people could slip. So if you had a rug at your front door, it decreased your liability on your insurance because you took efforts to prevent people from slipping. But then this thing got horrendous looking. So my dad's business that he created out of nothing was he would go and pick up their dirty rugs and have an identical rug, and he owned all the rugs. He was renting it to these businesses, and they would pay for the services because it gave him a break on their insurance. So he would go in every 2 weeks, he'd roll up the dirty rug, put it in the back of his station wagon, and put down a clean rug that was identical. And as his business grew, then he started getting employees, and he brought employees on. He started having to buy trucks. I think he had 5 trucks on the road, and he called himself the rug man. And so he had these drivers that would go out and they would change the rugs. And of course, when I was in high school on summer break and Christmas break and Easter break, I would work in the factory. And then when I graduated high school, I worked in the factory up until I got into the restaurant business. But working in the factory where we were cleaning these rugs was really hard work, but I got to see behind the scenes. And I noticed that my dad was the guy that handled every problem. Every client that was an upset client, every business has that, he would have to go and handle them personally. And apparently my dad had this great ability to sell, and a lot of people say, I inherited that. If you ask my brothers, they would say he's the last one to inherit it, but that's another story. But anyway, my father had this great ability to sell, so he became the key factor. And I didn't know that actually there's a term for that called a key man. And there's actually insurance policies called key man insurance policies, because when you have a business built around one personality, if that person dies or gets hit by a bus or something, that business is going to fall apart unless you have some sort of influx of money to find out you could get another key person. So when I was in school, I also learned about EBITDA, and it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That is how a bank values a business. So what they do is they look at a number, like how much, it's a very gross generalization I'm giving you. What's the gross income or the gross profit that comes in, including the stuff that gets written off. And then they use that number and they apply a multiplier to it. And the multiplier is how duplicatable is that business. So if somebody invests in your business or buys your business and they could add more to it, how much bigger could they make that business? When it comes to a family or a personality-driven business, the multiplier is less than 1. Meaning if you brought in $1 million of profit, you could probably sell your business for $700,000. And that's a chiropractic office because it's a very personality driven, and that's what I created. It was all based on me. I was the guy going out and doing all the talks. I was the guy going out and doing all the promotion, bringing the people in. I was educating them. I was treating them. I was doing the intake and collecting their co-pays and everything else. And I was very successful at it. So as I started hiring people, because I started growing, I would hand them off little bits of jobs and say, here, just do this, just do that, just do this. That is not the way to grow a large business. Now, everybody has a certain amount that they can handle. Some people can handle more doing that than others. I have a rock star wife, so we were able to handle a lot. And we got up to 750 visits a week, several $1 million a year in chiropractic. So that business grew to a large degree. But then when we started bringing in medical people, and we became an integrated practice, now we had different players. And I realized during that time that I need to start giving power to these people. It can't all be about me. Make no mistake, it was very flattering to walk through that business. And you got to realize, there was not many chiropractic practices around southeastern Pennsylvania that were doing 750 visits a week. I was, and actually the nickname I had in my community by other chiropractors and by patients was the Empire, because we were so big. There was a line out the door sometimes. People were standing outside smoking, waiting for their chance to get in. I was trying to get them to stop smoking, so I'd get them in as quick as I could. But what happened was that this was all built upon me. And the problem with that is I couldn't take a vacation. Every time I left the office, if I left the office, the numbers would go down. And I realized that's not good, because it's all hinged upon me. That's how my dad was in his business. He had a small business, I explained to you about the rugs, and he handled all the problems. And basically, he had to work and work. And when he finally retired at 56 years old, he was dead in less than 5 years of cancer. So, and they estimated he had cancer for probably 10 years. So he worked himself to death. And I didn't want to make that same mistake. The only difference between me and my father was I was aware of that concept. I don't think my dad was. World War II vet, no education, came out of the war, started a business, failed, started another business, failed, started another business, and it took off. And took off to the degree that he was able to make a comfortable living and raise 8 kids. I did not want to make the same mistake. I did not want to never meet my grandchildren. I wanted to be able to have kids, have them get married, raise them, enjoy the life with them, and spend time with my wife and be able to go on vacation. I started realizing when we integrated, I had to have better systems to run the business. So what we had to do is we had to create systems. And I realized as I got bigger and our staff got bigger, I couldn't be holding the whole reins. I had to create systems so people knew what they had to do. Now, let me tell you a little bit about business. When you're growing your practice, the worst thing in the world, the worst job in the world for anybody is to have somebody standing over their shoulder saying, do this, do that, do it this way, this is a better way, this is how I do it. So the way you handle that, and the way I saw it handled by these larger companies that I worked for, was they had systems written. The systems, which were in manuals and on video, you could actually access them and learn how to do your job. Then they brought you to a training center, and we had to perform on audio recording, on video recording, and in front of our peers, because this was a nationwide company, and they had people from all over the country at these trainings in Manhattan and in Philadelphia, so that we could actually see how we did and see how we compared to the other salespeople out there. That's how I learned to run the business, and I realized at that point I need to be doing the same thing with my office. So we had to create an organizational flow chart so people knew who they answered to, who was in charge, and who they were in charge of, and then who they were in charge of, and then where the person fell on the org board or the organizational flow chart. They had to learn what their job duties were. What was their job description? What was the thing they had to provide for the company to be successful? What was the product they made? You could have somebody doing a job thinking they're doing fantastic, but it wasn't what you were looking for. Like when I sent people out for screenings, I said, when you come back, we are not looking to see how many cards you got. What we're looking to see is how many patients scheduled. And so they had to know the product. The product wasn't meeting people and having great conversations. The product was people on the books, because that's what grew the business. And that's what I would do when I went out. So I had to write down everything. It became a daunting task. We were getting overwhelmed on how to do it. And then my wife came upon a book called The E-Myth, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And in that book, The E-Myth Revisited, he talks about a small business and how you take a small business and get it to grow to a big business. And he said, basically, small businesses don't work because it's all built around one person, and it eventually kills the person. So that was right up my alley when I read that. So we started studying E-Myth. We actually found out that they were teaching the business mastery program for the University of Phoenix. And this was back, I think, in 2005, 2006. We did it in 2005. So we went to a conference in Phoenix. We signed up with eMyth Worldwide and did a remote mastery program for 2 years. And during those 2 years, they taught us how to write systems. So when we had all those systems written, we finished that in 2007. We turned around and opened 3 practices in 1 year. And we said it has to be in a state we don't live in, because we don't want to be called in to do the technical work. Because our experiment was, how do we get this to run as a business? I knew chiropractic, I love chiropractic, and I wanted to turn chiropractic into a successful business so that other people could know chiropractic and love chiropractic. We did that, and we wrote all these systems, and that's what we teach at AMI now. We teach it because people need systems, and I talk to a lot of chiropractors, and I'm amazed that more than half of them, probably more than 2/3 of them, maybe even more than 75%, are still running personality-driven businesses, working themselves to death. So what we've done is we've created systems for these guys to be able to grow their business without losing touch of it. When you become an executive, it doesn't mean, yeah, call me next year and let me know what kind of year you had. No, it's I'll talk to you tomorrow on the morning meeting, because we never lost touch with our clinics. When we were running it from Oregon, we had a call coming in every morning from the clinics on the stats from the day before. And then I had at least 1 hour with each clinic on the list of clients that were in active care plans to help them debug when they got hung up. So they'd go down the list. Okay, let's go down the entire list of all the active patients. Joe Blow's doing great. Mary Smith is doing great. Joe Blow actually learned how to do this. But Johnny Smith, he's missing appointments. So, and Mary Jane is not getting better. So I would debug that stuff. So I never lost connection with it. I would fly out to the clinics at least once a month, spend a day there, sometimes 2. But that's what I did, and those clinics all did millions of dollars that year. So you can create this system if you want to do it. What you should do is apply some of this technology that I talked about in this video so you're not working yourself to death. It's great that the patients love you, but they'll love you if you get other qualified people in there with great systems, getting them well like you did. And that's what AMI is all about. The reason we started teaching this to the public and not just doing it for ourselves is I had an encounter with a loved one getting prescribed a drug, an opioid, that made him into a heroin addict. And I got very involved in helping that person recover, and they did great. They were a trooper, they had to be brave, and they're still clean all these years later. But in 2013, we started AMI so we could teach these systems to get more clinics doing this faster, because our biggest competition out there is the drug companies. And the biggest thing that they're beating us with is opioids and painkillers. Vicodin, OxyContin, all these different things that are not good for people and don't do anything to get them better. So we have these systems to show you how you can turn your business into a more systematic, smoothly run, seamless business. And you don't have to be there all the time. You can actually take a vacation with your family. You can be home for dinner with your kids, and you can go to Mary's ballet, and you can go to Johnny's baseball practice every once in a while and participate in those things. And that's what I wanted, and that's what I want for you. Thanks for listening.